Welcome back to the Forum Book Club. You have with you this week from our shelter-in-place locations, Joseph Pearce in South Carolina, Viuduro in another part of San Francisco, myself at Ignatius Press offices. And the first thing we want to do this week is for Joseph Pearce to explain to us why he is growing a beard. Is it because barbershops are closed? Is it because they can't buy razor blades from the drugstore? Or?
Mainly it was just because I enjoy being insulted by you, Father. That's the main reason. No,
that's an insult. You're like a black person thinks everybody's a racist, just because he says something. I'm sorry.
Actually, I'm Englishman. I've got a chip on both shoulders. You know how that is. Basically, Father, I really felt that I needed to do something psychically shocking to myself until, by way of sort of sackcloth and ashes, until my Lord is restored to me in the Blessed Sacrament. So I resolve not to shave until I get Jesus back.
All right. Well, we're very blessed at Ignatius Press because we have a little family here. It's almost a household type environment, and we have a chapel. So if you can't get on a plane,
and a priest.
Well, that's it. Yes. So if you can't get on a plane, you and Suzanne and your children could drive out here. We have a spot for you. You can be disinfected and then stay here with our community. But anyway.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll probably be arrested at the border to Georgia en route. That's the trouble.
That's right. Because now we have. By the way, on that topic, there's some concern about the Constitution, which allows citizens of the U.S. to travel anywhere and be accepted in any state. And people are saying, well, you can't stop them at the border. But we live in California. Ever since I've been a child, you had to stop at the border coming in, have your fruit and vegetables checked because they were trying to stop, entrance into the state of the fruit fly or something else. No one seemed to take that amiss. It was a little bit about weight, but so we'll see. But let's not get into politics yet. Well, yes, let's get into politics, but let's get into sexual politics, okay?
Yes.
I want you to correct me now. Oh, by the way, for our watchers and our listeners, whoever you may be, if there are any of you out there, this is the last discussion that Joseph and Vivian and I will have just ourselves on this book. But next week, we hope to have the author, Sue Ellen Browder, with us for kind of general questions and a summary of this book. But I would like the two of you to fill in and correct me here, because we're getting now to the last part of the book. And what can I summarize it this way, that when it comes to the feminist movement and the desire to obtain proper equality for women, Sue Ellen Browder has described Betty Friedan in the second wave, which was still pro-family and pro-life. Then Helen Gurley from Cosmopolitan magazine, which really represented the sexual revolution, was not pro-life and not pro-family, and was opposed, or at least criticized, by Betty Friedan. And then came the famous meeting in the Chinese room, in which the protagonists really were this Larry Lader and from NARAL, National North American, National Abortion Rights League, something like that. And Bernard Nathanson, the abortionist from New York. These two men really convinced Betty Friedan and her representatives to incorporate this pro-abortion and anti-life plank into their program. And then you had Alan Guttmacher from the Planned Parenthood, who was previously recognized the child as beginning from in conception in the womb, now changing his mind to his feeling that it was just a bunch of cells. And then that leads to the chapter we're going to start with this week. What is her name?
Kate Millett.
Yeah. Who basically evolves this into kind of an anti-male, anti-patriarchal, total pro-abortion gender ideology philosophy in which male and female is a social construct. So that's kind of the genealogy that she's following in this book. But I mean, expand on that or correct that or revise that. Is that where we are right now?
I think that's a pretty good summary of the book thus far. And I think that basically what we see with Kate Millett, which we're discussing in this chapter, which is chapter 6, I believe. Yes, chapter 6, Sexual Politics, is an overtly Marxist admixture coming into the ideological picture. Because in some ways you can see cosmopolitan as being sort of hedonistic, capitalistic. It's about just being empowered to be a good consumer and a good worker in the capitalist marketplace, and being equal to men in that respect. But with Kate Millett, we're talking about a Marxist interpretation of history along Hegelian lines. It's basically all an evolution, which is going to ultimately lead to the empowerment of women. That's and the whole of the past can be dismissed because it's patriarchal. Yes, manufactured by men.
Right. And to back up the Marxist influence, Joseph, on page 92, Sue Ellen tells us that Time magazine ordained Kate Millett the Mao Zedong of women's liberation. And that
Marx of the women's movement as well, I see noted there as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And however, Kate Millett herself was disappointed that Marxism didn't go far enough explicitly in terms of sexual political clash. And she was disappointed that the Soviet Union, after starting out trying to abolish the family, ended up abandoning that policy. So Kate Millett is even further out, if you will, on this kind of total war between these two classes, in her case, male and female, than even some of these predecessors. So that was an eye popper. I had never heard of her before this book.
Really?
Well, we can certainly see the incarnation of her ideas in the present, gender politics. And I, of course, what goes hand in hand with Marxism, that if you like, with the previous generations of feminists, you might sort of characterize them as agnostic. In other words, God wasn't really in the picture. You might say that agnosticism is an implicit atheism because God just doesn't figure, right? But it wasn't explicit. But with Kate Millett, we get explicit atheism and very antagonistic towards God in general and the Christian God in particular. So the bottom of page 94 in her book, Sexual Politics, she sweepingly dismissed God as a mere fantasy figure invented by men to dominate women. And the actual quote here is, "What lingers of supernatural authority, the deity, his ministry, together with the ethics and values, the philosophy and art of our culture, its very civilization is of male manufacture." And of course, the implication there is you throw the whole lot out, the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. Everything can be just destroyed in the whole art and civilization, music, just obliterate the whole thing and start from a tabula rasa.
Well, he definitely did throw out the baby, that's for sure.
Right.
Oh, yes.
It also threw out the husband.
That might have been not so bad. That's probably the best aspect of it. But
Well, I was going to say, behind every man-hating feminist is a hateful man, which is not to say that the road forward isn't Christ and his forgiveness. But Kate Millett, unfortunately, was raised a Catholic, but her father was an alcoholic and an abusive man. And I have to say, in my own experience, all of the man-hating feminists I've met over the years, particularly the ones who became lesbians, they all had a very painful relationship with men starting in their girlhood. And this is one of the sad, sin begets more sin.
yes. That's right.
But the solution to it is not to tear down the whole society and think you can start over, because you're going to start over with the same sinful people you had before.
I think a big mistake, of course, is that what has impacted you in microcosm is not something which embodies the macrocosmos. You know, that's the problem, is that we see our own experiences somehow being universalized, and rather than saying, hang on a second, you know, I think all of us, to one degree, spend a large part of our life unlearning the stuff we learned as kids that we thought was universal truth. Because when you're a child, you get universal truth as you perceive it from those around you, the adults. And, you know, part of it is if you're getting nonsense from those people or being abused by those people, you know, trying to disentangle that, that's not truth. That's your experience, which is not necessarily the same thing.
Right, right. And it also points to the importance of the father in the family, that if he is an abusive man and the child's first experience of fatherhood is through that man, that child is going to now struggle with the image of God the Father. It not in uninsurmountable ways. I mean, we can be healed through Christ. Thanks be to God.
It is amazing how much influence those early years have on one's entire life.
Yes.
In fact, I never, you know, I had the blessing of a good family, you know, and good friends. But as a priest, I've seen again and again over the years, young women especially, who were abused in their early childhood. It's marked them for their entire lives. Good people, but you just can't. Or I see it. Here's the way I see it in an analogous way. We have a person here who works with us, Eva Montana, a wonderful woman who founded the West Coast Walk for Life 15 years ago. And she likes dogs. And she got a rescue dog, a little dog called Mia. Mia was abused as a little dog. That dog is psychotic. That dog cannot be changed. No matter what you do, that dog is marked forever by what happened to him as a little puppy, you know. And so we're not dogs, we're not animals, but we still have some of the same, you know, mechanisms by which we form habits that are very hard to overcome.
They are hard, but
I think the key thing is here as well, though, we carry those scars, so we can't do anything, if you like, about the experience we've received. They are scars, but we can be healed. But we can only be healed if we get outside of ourselves. And part of the problem of this, of radical relativism, is there is nothing outside of yourself. In other words, you're the arbiter of truth. You are the center of your own microcosmos. There is no objective truth, so there's no escape. You literally are stuck inside your broken self with no way of engaging in communion with something which has a healing impact upon you. And the actual theology of this and the philosophy of this, again, Kate Millett, she says here, top of page 96, Christianity is the religion of the inferiority complex, and her quote, her parenthesis, humility. In other words, humility is the inferiority complex. So basically, the only way that you can overcome that is by being proud.
That's right.
And you know what the earliest cause of this is? It's the light bulb. Why the light bulb? Because right now, people are watching us and we're all illuminated by light bulbs, right? Before they had a light bulb, people used to go outside at night and there weren't a lot of these other lights, you know. They look up and they'd see the stars. How many people actually look at the stars anymore? Who can name a constellation? I admit, you know, I'm pretty bad on the constellation, but when you go outside on a night and look up in the sky and see these millions of stars up there, you have to realize that you're part of something vastly larger than you are, you know, and that gives a perspective of where, even though one can say a human life is much more important than the whole universe, nevertheless, we're part of something huge and something cosmic. But if all you do is live inside in your living room or your office and turn the lights on and you get on your smartphone, well, then you're the center of everything, you know. And it's not a very big thing you're the center of. Anyway, so remember that
But again, it's
the light
whole
bulb.
myth of Narcissus that we spend all of our time looking at ourselves now. It used to be that, in the pre-technological times, it was looking at yourself in the river, in the pond, in the lake, your reflection. Then it was the mirror, and now basically we have technological electronic mirrors where we only friend people that are going to agree with us and like us. Basically, inventing our cosmos basically to narcissistically make ourselves feel good, and the consequences, we feel really bad.
And who's the archetype of the person looking at himself in the pond? What's his name?
Narcissus.
And what happens? He
falls in and drowns.
Blanche to look at himself in the pond, and what happens?
He drowns.
Breaks off and he drowns. I mean, that's...
Yes. Well, and Sue Ellen Browder does point out the sad fate of Kate Millett and others like her, in and out of insane asylums, multitude suicide attempts, and so on. The thing that really surprised me was not her fate, but Betty Friedan's reaction to Kate Millett. Here, Betty Friedan, the mother of second wave feminism, and this is what she has to say. This is on page 99 to 100. This is a direct quote from Betty Friedan saying, quote, "Unfortunately, the new sexual theorists do not seem to see the possibility of sex and love combined, of joyful sex as part of a larger, meaningful relationship, and some are badly exaggerating the presumed positives of lesbian sex. We don't want a society in which there are two separate sexes with each getting their pleasure by themselves. Such a vision is hardly the radical future. It is only pseudo-radical because it does not lead to any real institutional change. In essence, we cannot permit the image of women to be developed by the homosexual." And so on. Well, this was written, what year did she write this? I forgot to check. Clearly, this was in the 70s, right? Because Kate Millett kind of fell onto the stage in 1970. And here I was so surprised to see someone like Betty Friedan go after it so strongly. And yet now we're how many years later? And unfortunately, it's the Kate Milletts of the women's movement who are still out in front and being the face of the movement. I don't know how we can get back to...
What I find outrageous and ironic is that if someone on the so-called conservative right had said something about how Nazi Germany was great until 1943, and then it went off the rails, he'd be crucified, and quite rightly. But then you do actually have Kate Millett here talking about the Soviet Union basically being great right up until 1943. So the great purges, Stalin's murder of, by this stage, by 1943, certainly by any most conservative estimate, over 10 million people. The extermination of 10 million people. And she could talk about this and still be accepted and embraced in the mainstream of feminism. It's outrageous.
Sorry that they didn't go far enough, in her view.
Right, exactly, yeah.
It's pretty shocking.
Yeah. Well, a little interlude here for those who are watching and not just listening. I want to show how really the solution to these problems that we're discussing in this book can be seen in the background of the two images you have of Joseph and Vivian. In the background of Joseph, you see the portrait of G.K. Chesterton, who will tell you what's wrong with the world and what's right with the world and how important the family is. And in the background of Vivian, you have a harp, which is played by her daughter, Mary. And the idea of a harp in the home and a woman being able to fill a house with music, that's what makes culture. Really does.
You also have in the background a painting of Cardinal Newman as a young man, son. And, yes, we're surrounded by art and culture that because we've transmitted that as a family to the next generation. And that's exactly what the family can do.
Absolutely. By the way, for our viewers, you can't actually see that Newman portrait in the way we've got you cropped, Vivian, but it's there. We know it's there.
It's there. Yep.
So, shall we go on to chapter 7, A New Hope? You know,
Yes.
is there really hope here? She says, a new hope arises. I liked two phrases of hers. Both of them, well, they begin on page 111. She calls this kind of feminism she's opposing sex revolution feminism. I mean, that's a beautiful character. Well, beautiful. That's a poignant characterization of what the feminism has become, sex revolution feminism. But then she says, she's talking about the real feminists. She says, they're well organized in a vast, interconnected army of love. I like that. A vast, interconnected army of love. That's a beautiful expression she's got there.
I do actually like the fact that she finishes so positively. I won't use the word optimistically because it seems to me that optimism is a form of subjectivism, as pessimism is a form of subjectivism, right? We're projecting our prejudices onto something. But I just think this is positive. I think that she has shown, that in spite of the fact that the mass media and the mega dollars are behind the abortion industry, that here we are 50 years on with the pro-life movement more energized and more active and full of young people in spite of all that. In fact, what it should do is to rekindle a real genuine hope in our own hearts that the monster can be overcome by grassroots people, and as Father said, and as Sue Ellen Browder says, an army of love.
Yes, and go ahead, Vivian.
I was just going to say, I also appreciated that among her examples were just individuals not necessarily involved in any kind of politics or political action.
Right.
Mother Teresa, of course, we all know her, but she mentioned a friend of hers,
Margot, yeah,
who cared for, an unexpected child conceived out of wedlock, I guess by her own daughter. But in other words, we can think of movements as strictly political things. And what I appreciated about Sue Ellen's approach was to show the actions done by individuals that no one else may ever even know about, the actions of love that they have done, has more power in the world than the glam magazines and whatnot. There's an illusion that we think we know where power is, and it's actually in actions that maybe none of us will ever know about.
One of the dangers, I think, is that we tend to see things, and this is a very Marxist, ironically, way of seeing things. We tend to see things in the abstract, political movements, political machinations, mechanisms. We don't see the person, we don't see the concrete. And really, it's people working together that change society, not mechanisms. And one thing, on page 116, this is Sue Ellen Browder at her best here. What humility really is, contrary to what Kate Millett might say. Middle of the page, Mother Teresa's dignity was not lowered when she was cleaning the toilets, nor was her dignity elevated when she was accepting the Nobel Prize. She always remained aware that her dignity came from her ever-present identity as a beloved daughter of God, which led to her doing everything not for herself alone, but for others and the glory of God. You're having captured this of humility, which is the antidote to the poison of pride.
Yes.
A little note that came to mind as you were speaking before here. You got movements and so on and political things, and you've got this individual charity on a very practical level. But, people deride those who have what they call conspiracy theories. And probably most conspiracy theories are false. But when she describes how Helen Gurley got together the editors of all the women's magazines in New York, and they all agreed, we're going to publish these articles on abortion. I mean, that is a true conspiracy.
Yes,
it was done intentionally to influence public opinion through false and misleading journalism. I mean, that's terrible. But we have kind of an it's another conspiratorial movement in the sense of breathing together with the spirit. I mean, for all the, as I say it, mixed values of what the internet can do. I mean, it has decentralized a lot of things. And so you have these blogs, people writing each other, people on Facebook together or whatever. You have a lot of collaboration, if you will, from little people all over the country that can really make a difference. I mean, the Tea Party was an example of that. I mean, that just came kind of counter the media. How'd they do it? They did it by social media, really.
Yeah, we do need to remember, however, that, and I agree with you, Father. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that the internet technology has allowed for a lot of decentralization of power and therefore the re-empowerment of the little man, and thanks be to God for that. But it is possible to shut down dissident voices, and the internet is basically controlled still by a handful of people that thus far, because they want the custom, because they want the money, that they basically allowed anybody to have a voice. But it only takes a change of direction or diktat, and all of a sudden dissident voices are shut down. So I don't think we should put all our eggs into the cyberspace basket, because if we're not working on grassroots level in our own communities, those virtual communities can be shut down.
Well, I do disagree with you to some extent on that, in the sense that yes, if everybody goes to Facebook or Instagram or whatever other platform they can use, that can be manipulated. You can be shut down there, But as far as the internet itself goes, I mean, email lists. I mean, no one is shut down who I can send my email to, Or if I have my own blog, I mean, that's my blog. Facebook doesn't have any control over that at all. So one of the things about internet, which it was designed that way for military purposes, that it's all these different nodes. And so if two get taken out or a bomb blows over here, you can't shut down the internet itself. So I distinguish here. Yes, power's been concentrated in these, Facebook, Instagram, Amazon, Google, and so on, but not the internet itself as a way that individuals can contact each other and form.
I agree with that. Although the platforms, most blogs, we still need platforms to actually get their voice out there, and the platforms are the points of centralization that can be shut down. But yeah,
well, there's a great blog called One Mad Mom. I don't know who it is, but Eva does know who it is and won't tell. She is a Bay Area homeschooling mother, and like so many homeschooling mothers, and I include Vivian in this, who have spent so much time, educating their kids, but they're phenomenal in what they've read, the research they do, how articulate they are. And this woman, I mean, she just is quoting people, she's getting research and stuff like that, but she now has moved from a major platform called WordPress to one called Feminist, F-O-E-D-U-S. Feminist means a covenant. And it's actually a platform which is run by either Catholics or Christians, precisely to avoid this possibility that a platform will shut you down.
Good.
I would like to mention something that Sue Ellen mentions on page 123. Sometimes we tend to think of the people in media who are opposed to the way we think, or the way that, we tend to villainize them. And she makes the point that, media people are locked inside their own little ideological boxes, and they simply cannot even see. She uses that word. They simply cannot see the people who think differently from themselves. And I have to say that that's a really important point, that it's a sobering point for all of us to consider. We tend to, birds of a feather flock together, and we tend to stay in groups that think like we do and affirm our prejudices, affirm our assumptions. And it really takes a special effort to go outside of that comfort zone and entertain information from somebody coming from some other place. And so part of the great thing about having the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression is precisely so that you can have a variety of opinions, a variety of voices, and hope that people's good sense will help them sort out, fact from fiction and truth from falsehood. It's not perfect by any means, but she does on several places in the book try to, as much as she's pointing out what some of these media stars have done to mislead women, she's always also trying to kind of balance you from drawing conclusions. Well, they're just terrible people. And, anyway, they can't,
right.
That often is true.
And how do we respond to the objection? Well, you three are just part of your own little friendly group that have your own views and are blind to everyone else and are just one more ideology out there competing with other ideologies. And the answer is our ideology is as big as the cosmos, and we did not invent it. Our leader is not some particular politician or celebrity. Our leader is God himself who became incarnate in Christ. Now, if we're wrong that he's God, well, then we're really misled. No question about that.
Right.
But if there is a God and he sent his son into the world to reveal him to his creatures, then this is not an ideology. This is not some little partial group. We're not partisan. I mean, we are connected to the origin of the cosmos. Our world is not a little microcosm, it's the macrocosm. So it's not, it can't be compared.
But by the same token, the fact that the Christian body throughout the world is broken shows that people can, even within this universal truth, see differently from each other and argue with each other. And and then there's a lot of prudential judgments that one has to make that you can't find in the Bible, or you can't find. So there's plenty of room for divergent opinion, even in people who believe in the same God.
Right, so within the cosmos, that's right. As long as you have a magisterium, it helps.
If I can just to be the divergent voice here. By the way, this is just going to prove that we're not just agreeing with each other in the small little club here. I would argue explicitly that the Catholic Church is the mystical body of Jesus Christ. And insofar as people deviate from that, they move away from it. And I don't think we should be saying that people that are no longer part of that universal truth, which is the mystical body of Jesus Christ, are somehow equal to us. We equal to the truth, I should say anyway. And of course we should talk to them. Of course we should engage with them using reason, philosophy, theology, history. Of course we should do that. But if we're going to sort of try to pretend that somehow or other this is a level playing field where wacky ideas by Stalinist feminists are somehow equal to the universal orthodoxy of the Catholic faith, then I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disagree.
All right, well, I have to say two things here. One, I never said that all ideas are equal. I never said that. Two, the body of Christ includes anyone who has been baptized in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
It doesn't, everybody who's baptized does not have an equal right to challenge the magisterium of the church, which is the teaching authority of the mystical body of Jesus Christ.
I didn't say that either, but I will say that because human beings
make them an equal citizen.
Human beings are limited and flawed. You know, one time I was just observing that my eyes are in the front of my head so that I can see straight ahead. You know, other animals have them out here and they have all this peripheral vision that I don't have or whatever. But I realized, gosh, I can only see in front of myself. That's not very much. And I started to meditate on this reality that all of us, we're really limited in what we can see and what we can.
Which is why we have to get on our knees before something bigger than ourselves, which is the mystical body of Jesus Christ.
And see with the eyes of all the saints.
Pardon?
And see with the eyes of all the saints, yes.
Yes, but I'm just saying it takes, I think we could all use a little humility in recognizing that we're limited in our powers of observation, reasoning, and knowledge.
That's why we get our knees in front of the mystical body of Jesus Christ and the communion of the saints, because we realize how limited we are.
I agree. No, I am not arguing with that.
All right. I want to, my last question here, I think it'll be my last question, has to do, we're on this last chapter, The Hidden Army of Love. And on page 121, she lists, all these groups that she mentions are really promoting the right view of women, but she's got American Feminist Association, Concerned Women for America, blah, blah, blah. But she conflates in here groups which are specifically groups promoting a better view of women with groups that are more focused on the pro-life issue, on abortion, like National Right to Life and Americans United for Life and so on. So in a sense, she kind of conflates the strength and the goodness of the pro-life movement with her idea of a Catholic feminist movement. And is that legitimate?
Well, if you notice on this list, she also has Anglicans for Life, the Jewish Pro-Life Foundation.
Yeah.
So
it's
that's
even
one
more
point.
broad. Yeah, it's even broader.
That's one point. The other point, though, Father, your question, so is Catholic pro-life feminism the same thing as the pro-life movement? Is that what your question is?
No.
And I was
differentiating between the pro-life movement and Sue Ellen Browder's understanding of feminism, and conflating her feminism with the pro-life movement. Because I would say that the pro-life Jewish movement, the Jewish Pro-Life Foundation, is actually closer to a Catholic pro-life foundation than something that's promoting women in a feminist sense, which may or may not be pro-life.
Well, I would even go further and say you can't be pro-woman and be anti-life.
Well, I'd agree with that.
Right.
A woman is designed to be a mother, whether she ever becomes a biological mother or not. A woman is designed to be a mother, and anything that would put a wedge between a woman's identity and that reality can't possibly be pro-woman.
And then I think you can say the other converse. You can't really be pro-life unless you're pro-woman.
Exactly.
So I mean, I kind of answered my own question there, but it's all right for her to kind of, so to speak, co-opt the pro-life movement and say, aha, my hope now for the future for Catholic feminism, choices for a new generation, is the pro-life movement. I mean, the two really are part of the same desire to bring back our awareness of the original created order of male, female, and openness to life that respects the differences, respects the equality and dignity, and respects the child. I mean, those things are inseparable.
There really has been a war on woman, the war on her fertility, the war on her ability to be a mother, the war of propaganda to try to prevent her from becoming a mother. That is the real war on women.
With that, I think we'll conclude our discussion among ourselves of this wonderful book, Sex and the Catholic Feminist. But next week, you won't want to miss this. We're going to have Sue Ellen Browder with us, and we'll be able to talk to her, ask her questions, and get her comments on our views of her book. So thanks, everyone, for joining us. Hope to see you next week.